No, here we are. It's the end of the week. We've got a lot of stuff we've talked about all week. And, of course, now we're going into the weekend. We're going into a weekend without the Steelers playing on Sunday. And so now you've got a weekend where we can basically contemplate what they're going to do at the trade deadline. But, of course, I don't know if that's going to be something that even comes into play or not. I think one of the things is very interesting to me about the whole situation with respect to the Steelers is they may have convinced themselves that they're good enough with the guys they have. They might have convinced themselves that they're good enough with the guys like Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin, that they might not feel the need to go out and make changes and get better. At the end of the day, I think that's going to be the determination. Is you and I can sit here and talk every night about how they need to get better at the receiver position, but if they don't believe that, it's not going to happen. But one of the things I wanted to do is do a little deep dive on the defense. I know there's a lot of people that are really concerned about the Steelers' defense because of the way the Giants did what they did. But before we get going, the game is always on at Archies on Carson, Pittsburgh's best place for food, drinks, and sports. Open Sundays for the game from 12 to 2. Be sure to check their daily drink specials and stop in for 80-cent wing nights. Monday through Thursday, tell them Paul Zeise sent you if you get there. Also, they have the Paul Zeise grilled cheese, which is always something that is a good option. So you're looking for something to do tonight, a place to go to eat, drink, be merry, or you're looking for a place tomorrow to go watch some college football, or even Sunday, Archie's is a great place. Archie is one of the best people you'll ever meet, which adds to the charm there. And, of course, Saturdays, if you're a West Virginia fan, they've got a huge West Virginia contingent that goes and watches the West Virginia games. And, of course, it's a away Pitt game tomorrow, so there will be a big contingent of the loyal Sons and many other Pitt fans that will be there. So if you get a chance, go to Archie's to watch the games. We'll talk a little bit about those games too as well. So one of the things we've talked a lot about is the defense since the Giants game. They gave up a bunch of yards rushing. They gave up a bunch of yards passing. TJ Watt he did save them from giving up even more points than they gave up with the strip sack basically end the game. They did it against Daniel Jones. And so there's a number of people that were worried about, well, how good is their defense really? I think one thing you have to do is context is always important. And the Steelers, I don't know that they've necessarily really played a good offense yet. They've played some decent offenses. But I'm looking at the numbers here. Through 8 games, the Steelers have given up 310 yards per game, which, that sounds like a lot, especially around here where we're used to the Steelers not giving up, a ton of yards like that. But here's the thing. That's the, 10th, 2, 4, 6, 9th. That's the 9th best total in the NFL. Passing yards per game. The Steelers actually have given up a lot of passing yards, really 219.8 passing yards. Part of that is because, they have actually had some leads in the second half. Teams have had to try and throw, and they've had their prevent defense on. I bet you that number would be less if they hadn't played their prevent as much as they have. And really, it isn't like they've got lit up by anybody, so to speak. The Colts scored some points against them. But for the most part, I'm looking at their numbers, and I think the most important number is the scoring defense, points per game. Steelers are second. That tells me that the passing numbers that we're talking about probably are inflated a little bit, the passing yardage, just because they've been ahead. So I think it's important to remember that. I think it's important to note that, hey, it's really an important thing to have context. Through 8 games, this defense has been pretty good. They've been pretty good. They've been pretty steady. They've done a good job of giving the Steelers a chance to win. I think that's something that you can't really even put a price tag on in many ways. We've talked about this defense being that defense that gives the Steelers a chance. So if you're only giving up, 14.9 yards per 14.9 points per game, you're going to win a lot of games. So early in the week, I think there was a lot of panic that was set in about the Steelers defense. And I just don't think it was really all that necessary. I think next week, if we're talking about the Commanders going up and down the field, then maybe we'll start to talk about the defense being maybe an issue. But I just don't think it is. I think now, especially, they're getting Cam Sutton. I know that, Beanie Bishop had a couple of very fortunate bounces that turned into interceptions for him. But obviously, I think having Cam Sutton, for whatever you think about him, he's going to make them better. And so I feel like that's really what's going to happen is he'll make them better. I think they will probably fix some of the things that ailed them against the Giants. I think the defense is going to be fine. I do. Excuse me. I think that's something that is really, really going to be way overblown for another week because they don't play again. And I think it's ridiculous because I got caught up in it too. I was kind of in the same boat as a lot of people. I said, hey, their defense, boy, it looked bad against the Giants, and they're not stopping anybody, and this isn't a good thing. Well, guess what? Once you do a deep dive into the numbers, like I've always said, you look at 8 games as opposed to 1. The numbers are much different. And again, when you look at let's go to see who they've played, because that's a part of the story. It's a part of the story a lot of people don't want to tell from the standpoint of, they sit here and they just want only the good data. But let's see who they've played. The Giants are the second worst offense scoring-wise in the NFL. That's one team they've played. The Raiders are about 7th worst. The Chargers are about 8th worst. The Jets are about 9th worst. The Cowboys are, about 12th worst. I mean, that's the bulk of a lot of teams they've played. Denver maybe like 14th. So they've played mostly teams that are among the bottom half in terms of scoring. And that has to be a part of the story. The Falcons have been a little bit better. Obviously, they are somewhere in the top 12, 13. But reality is they have played a lot of really bad offenses. So that helps their numbers. But I think that they've done what you're supposed to do against bad offenses. They've stopped them. They've stopped them from scoring. They've given the Steelers a chance to win. Atlanta's the best offense that they've played. Atlanta's averaging 24 points a game. And so, the Steelers are averaging 23 points a game. So really, take that game out of the equation, and you probably put a little asterisk against that game because it was the first game of the season. It was pretty clear Kirk Cousins was still rusty and all that other stuff. Okay, now you go further down the road, and you see among the 10 worst offenses they played, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Among the 12 worst offenses in the NFL, they played the Cowboys, the Jets, the Chargers, the Raiders. So they've played, four of the teams they've played are among the worst in the NFL in terms of scoring. That has to be a part of the equation, but I don't think it's the whole equation. I don't. I just feel like you look at what they're doing, and to me, their defense is really good. It's not a problem, their defense. And I think that we've talked a little bit about the trade deadline, basically saying, try and put yourself in Omar Khan's shoes. What do you think this team needs? I'm starting to believe the idea that Omar Khan does not think that they need to get better at receiver. I think they might just ride with what they have. I think if they make a move, it might be more likely that they make a move for a defensive lineman or somebody that they can just sort of bolster their depth. That's honestly, to me, those are the two areas that you bolster. And I think that's where they make the money to do the job, and we just sit here and talk about it and try and tear it apart one piece at a time. I think that's the greatest thing about it is I don't have to, like, my job doesn't depend on whether or not the moves I make work out, whereas these guys, it does. But that doesn't mean they always make the right moves. So I think the Steelers, to me, here's the other thing I'll tell you. Every time I watch the Houston Texans play, I think the Steelers I think the AFC is worse and worse and worse and worse. Especially you take away a couple of their weapons. I mean, if you watch them last night against the Jets, their offense is terrible right now. And that's one of the teams that a lot of people had ahead of the Steelers, or they thought, well, they're going to finish ahead of the Steelers. They're going to beat this. Last year, they beat up the Steelers and they were better. And but here's the thing. They felt to me like a team where everything sort of went right for them last year. I kind of thought this would be a year where, okay, teams that aren't used to winning, which they aren't, sustaining that for the second year can be really difficult. So now I look at the Texans and I say they were a team I thought, well, maybe they're better than the Steelers, or they're ahead of the Steelers, or they're going to finish ahead of the Steelers. I think if the Steelers played Houston right now, I don't know that it would be close, honestly. That's one less team I think you really, really have to worry about. Now, in a couple of weeks, going back to the offenses, where we're at in terms of the offenses, okay, Washington's averaging 30 points a game. The Ravens are averaging, where are they at? They're averaging 30.3 points per game. So now you've got on the horizon the Ravens and the Commanders, who are two of the best offenses in the league. You obviously have the Chiefs coming up down the road and the Eagles. Even the Bengals are scoring points. They're just not stopping anybody, and they don't seem to be able to capitalize. But I think then, after that stretch of so many games, I think then you can make a real determination about just how good this defense is. But right now, if you ask me, and I know it sounds crazy coming off of their performance against the Giants, I think the defense is going to be fine. I think it's going to be a matter of how well can Russell Wilson play consistently for the rest of the season. And again, I don't think that he's ancient, but I think we've seen a lot of these quarterbacks that are older, as they get hit more, as they play more, as they get a little more fatigued in their arm, well, then what happens? They don't play nearly as much. They don't play nearly as well. And we've seen it with a number of these quarterbacks that are older as the season goes on. They just sort of regress a little bit because the recovery from getting banged around for 3.5 hours on a Sunday, the recovery time for a 35-year-old or 36-year-old is a lot more. But to me, the defense, I think, really has answered the questions that needed to be answered. I know that they played bad teams. I know that they've played bad offenses. I know they've played bad quarterbacks. But to me, I really look at it and just say, I can't really get to a point where I'm not at all. I can't get to a point where I am worried about the defense at all, because I'm not. I'm not worried that the defense is a problem. I'm not worried that the defense is going to be a problem. I'm not worried about any of that. What I'm worried about, really, can the offense sustain what it's done over the last couple of weeks? That's really going to be the question. So the next couple of days, I think you look at, hey, if you're Omar Khan, are you making a move, or have you convinced yourself, if you're Omar Khan, that they're good enough at receiver, that their receiving group is going to be good enough to get them to where they need to get to? And I think that's going to be a big determining factor, and I think it's going to tell you everything you need to know if they don't make a move. Because if they don't make a move, they're basically going to roll the dice. And that's what they're doing. They're just basically rolling the dice. And I think that we'll see. But don't be surprised if they don't make a move, because that's honestly, I think, part of the problem is that if they don't make a move, they've convinced themselves that they're good enough. And maybe they are. Maybe we'll sit here at the end of the year and basically sit here and tell you at the end of the year, wow, we were all wrong. These receivers are good enough. But I don't know really whether or not they're going to be, because I still have my suspicions that that's going to be the issue. But again, the most important thing the number one question that we wanted to really dive into is the defense. And quite frankly, when I put it together, I kind of was like, well, I don't know necessarily that there's a whole lot to talk about when it comes to the defense. I think that's going to be interesting to watch to see if it was just a one bad night type of thing. Cam Sutton, though, should intrigue you because I think Cam Sutton will give them another element. Again, I know Beanie Bishop has played well, consider all things considered. I think, he's been fortunate. A couple of balls have sort of, bounced into his arms. A couple of his, at least two of his interceptions, he was just sort of right place at right time. But I don't think there's any question that they believe Cam Sutton is an upgrade and will be better at that slot corner position. If nothing else, it gives them another corner because they need help there. They need some depth there. And that's honestly where he's going to come in to play. But I think if you look at what this team has done on defense, I can, in my mind, probably come up with more than 3 plays that every single player on defense has made, in terms of helping them win games. And I'm not talking about just routine plays. I'm talking about big plays or, big tackles. I know that there is some concern about Patrick Queen because he's missed some tackles. He's been out of position at times. He's been not great all the time in coverage. Is he still learning? And when I say learning, is he just starting to feel comfortable in the defense? I don't know. But again, if the two biggest issues that you're talking about on your defense is that you got a slot corner who might not quite be good enough, and you've got maybe a little bit of depth issue on your defensive line, and one of your inside linebackers has been inconsistent, if that's what we're talking about, we're not really talking about anything. I mean, I know we could sit here and dissect it, and I know that there are people that dissect it all the way down to every little minutia. There's no reason for that, for the simple fact that this team, the way they're built, is the way they've won games. And now over the last 2 weeks, they've sort of added a passing game element that we didn't know that they were going to have. So now the question becomes, are they going to fully open up their offense? Even if it means they're going to put their defense on the field more because, there's going to be more possessions in these games and quicker drives and all that other stuff. Are they going to fully unleash their offense here? Now they've got Russell Wilson. He's played 2 weeks. He's got a whole week, 2 weeks now to work on some things and watch film and all the other stuff you do during the bye weeks. Of course, 4 or 5 of those days they go on vacation or they go, back to their house, their home, wherever they're from or whatever. But for the most part, I'm going to be interested now to see if they unleash this offense. I mean, we've seen bits and pieces of it, and it's been pretty good at times. It's been entertaining at times. But there's other times where they're still, basically, you can tell they've got the reins on this thing, and it's not nearly as potent as it could be. That's sort of the next level for them. That's the next step they're going to take. The next step they're going to take is very simple. Are you going to allow Russell Wilson to let it fly? Are you going to unleash this offense in a way that it could be unleashed? And if you do, are you willing to live with the fact that you're going to put your defense out there on the field a little bit more than you want to? That you might open yourselves up to maybe a few more turnovers here and there just because you're not, you're not being ultra safe anymore. That's sort of the next frontier for this team. The defense has proven to me they're good, maybe even elite. I'll save the word elite for when they start playing better offenses, but they've been really, really good against bad offenses. They've dominated them the way that you're supposed to dominate them. And the thing I want to see with this team, very simple. I would love to see them unleash the offense. Take the reins off. You got, you don't go get a veteran like Russell Wilson. You don't go do those things if you are not going to, trust him enough to do the things that he's capable of doing. You don't go get a guy like him. If Justin Fields was still the quarterback, I'd get it. I'd understand it. And here's the thing. I don't think there's any evidence that suggests they wouldn't have won the last two games with Justin Fields playing. I think they would have. They might have been different. They'd have played out different. They might have been closer. They might, whatever. They had a good formula to win with him too. And that formula was to be ultra conservative and, keep him out of harm's way and keep the ball out of harm's way and be content to punt. That old Dave Wannstedt saying any drive that ends in a kick is a good drive, that thing. I almost, by the way, I almost fainted the one night when I heard Tom Brady use that expression on Monday Night Football. Monday Night Football on the radio I don't know if he still does it, but they would have Tom Brady come on at halftime, and he would do these interviews, which are just dreadful. And the one night he said that thing, and it's sort of how the Steelers play. One night he said, hey, there's that old saying where every drive that ends in a kick is a good one. And I was like, then you start to think about it, and what he's saying is you don't turn it over and you either punt it or you kick a field goal or you kick an extra point. It's been a good drive. Okay. The Steelers they had that mentality for the first 6 weeks or whatever when they had Justin Fields. There's no reason to play that way anymore. None. You don't go get a guy like Russell Wilson who's accomplished all the things he has, who throws the ball as well as he does, who's smart as he is, who sees the field as well as he does. You don't do that. You don't go get a guy like that and give him the team if you are, going to hold him back. Because if that doesn't make sense to me. It would be the absolute dumbest thing that I could think of in many ways is if they can, continue to do these things where they try and be a little bit more conservative on offense than they need to. I would love to see them be far more aggressive and really going after it and trying to score points and all that other stuff. I'd much rather see that than them basically do the things they do in terms of trying to minimize mistakes and trying to minimize the number of possessions and trying to, win games by grinding out other teams. I don't want to see that anymore. I'll say one thing. The Steelers over the last couple of years have been one of the most boring teams to watch. There's no reason to be boring anymore. You've got a guy that can fly, that can throw it out there, that can let it fly. Let him let it fly. I've had enough of the Steelers being the team that tries to win games 16-13, and they don't want to turn it over, and they don't want to try and give up sacks and negative plays. And to me, you went and got Russell Wilson for a reason. You went and got him because he's a borderline Hall of Famer who's proven he can throw the ball at a really, really, really high level. So let him go throw the ball. I think that's the key for the Steelers the next 3 or 4 weeks. Quite frankly, here's what I'm rooting for. Are you ready? I'm rooting for Jaden Daniels to go crazy. I'm rooting for Lamar Jackson to go crazy. I'm rooting for, I guess, as Jameis Winston would be next, I'm rooting for him to go crazy. I want to see the Steelers win a couple shootouts. That's what I would love to see. I'd have to think long and hard about the last time the Steelers legitimately won a shootout, just a game where both teams went crazy, both offenses went crazy. Last team that has the ball is going to win it. I mean, they've won some games on some field goals, some late field goals by Chris Boswell over the past few years. But I'd have to think about it. I would have to look it up. When was the last time the Steelers won just a legitimate shootout game where both teams are going up and down the field and both defenses, seem to be powerless to stop it? And you say to yourself, boy, this is almost like a Big 12 game now. And, the last team that gets the ball is going to win. When was the last time? It would have to be probably during the Ben Roethlisberger era, right? I mean, I can't off the top of my head think about the last time that happened where they won a game like that, where the score got out of control, where it was pretty clear they couldn't stop the other team, and they won a game because their offense was much better than the other team's offense. I would love to see a couple of those kind of wins, because here's the thing: if you prove you can win that kind of game, you prove you can go out, say, Lamar Jackson puts up, what do they average, 30.3 points per game? Say he goes out and has a great game, and Derrick Henry's running wild, and, Deontay Johnson catches a couple of touchdowns or whatever. I'd love to see the Steelers win 38-35, something like that. Here we go. Pittsburgh versus Green Bay. What year was that when they won that a shootout? When they won like a true shootout game. Robert says Pittsburgh versus Green Bay. It's been a while. Here we go. All you need to know is Mike Wallace catches the winning touchdown. So it's been a while. But like I said, I think that's the thing. If you prove you can win those kind of games, you convince me, honestly, that you can win in the playoffs against the Chiefs, against the Bills, against the Ravens. Right? I think those are the three teams that we're talking about. Everybody else in the AFC, I'm sorry, stink. Everybody stinks. Maybe Joe Burrow and the Bengals figure it out and get it together, and they become a team that you got to try and outscore and beat. I get it. Okay, maybe them, but I doubt it. They look like a team that's got too many issues to overcome, that they're not going to be able to get enough consistency to win 5 or 6 games in a row and, put themselves legitimately in the playoffs. It feels to me like they're going to be a team that wins a couple of games and look really good, and then they'll lose a game or two, and then they'll win a couple. I don't think they're going to be a team that you got to worry about. But, look at the teams in the playoffs that you'd have to play. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. We talk about them all the time. You got the Bills and Josh Allen. The Bills are the most feast or famine team there is. If Josh Allen's playing well and that team is scary offensively, they can go up and down the field and put a lot of pressure on your defense. And the Ravens. But anybody else you're going to play in the playoffs, the Steelers not only should win, they should be favored by a lot. And when I say a lot in the NFL in the playoffs, I mean 5 points or more. Steelers, Chargers, Justin Herbert's a good player, but guess what? He has nobody around him, and that team tries to win games, 10-8 because they have to. The Broncos, same thing. The Broncos have a really good defense. They have Bo Nix at offense. I don't think that you have to, try and win a shootout against them. The Texans, we just talked about, their offense stinks. The Colts basically just turned it over to geriatric, 95-year-old Joe Flacco. Who are you going to have to beat in the playoffs other than those three teams? But those are the three teams that probably are between you and getting to the Super Bowl. And one of the things that has happened every single year the last, 7 years, really, since they won a playoff game, they went into the playoffs, and I basically said they can't beat anybody with their offense. Even, Ben's last couple of years, they can't beat anyone with their offense. Anybody that's any good, the Steelers are not going to beat them with their offense. Well, I'd like to see the next few weeks that they can beat some teams with their offense. Like, I don't want to see them beat the Commanders 28-10. I want to see them beat the Commanders 38-35, or the Ravens, 35-31. Those are the kind of games they got to prove they can win. And if they prove that they can win those games, I think, honestly, you're in a place now where the sky's the limit. And that's the whole point. But again, that's the whole reason you brought Russell Wilson here. The whole reason you brought Russell Wilson here was so that you could win those kind of games, so that you could go out and you could, basically match touchdowns with teams that are the best teams. Again, I look at the AFC and I think it's a 4-dog race in the AFC. The Bills, the Ravens, the Steelers, and the Chiefs. Those are the only 4 teams that matter. The rest of it is all garbage. And a lot of it is really garbage. At the bottom with, teams like Jacksonville, and even the Raiders are terrible. You look, the Texans are probably going to win that division because the rest of that division stinks. But how good are the Texans really? The Dolphins, I guess they got Tua back, and maybe they can get on a run, and but they've got a lot of issues and a lot to overcome as well. Maybe they emerge as a team that's much better than we've seen so far. I don't think so. I think that this is the kind of season where everything is sort of falling apart for them, to be honest. So it's going to be interesting to see how their offense sort of evolves now over the next 3 or 4 weeks, and whether or not they completely take the reins off and just let them do their thing. That's really, to me, where it's all at with the Steelers. That's, between the trade deadline is just Tuesday. There's some interesting stuff there, but what really is interesting to me is just how good can this offense be? And I think it's got a chance. By the way, the game is always on at Archies on Carson, Pittsburgh's best place for food, drinks, and sports. Open Sundays for the game, 12 p.m. to 2 a.m. Be sure to check the daily drink specials. Stop in for 80-cent wing nights, Monday through Thursday. Tell them Paul Zeise sent you when you got there. By the way, as a note, I am pretty sure I'm going to be doing this live feed on Monday from Archies. So if you're around town or whatever and you want to stop in and have some wings or have a grilled cheese while I do this live feed, we can probably accommodate you. So it'll be a good time. We'll have a good time, and then we'll watch Monday Night Football. It should be a lot of fun. That being said, tomorrow there is a really couple of big – speaking of shootouts, I would expect SMU Pitt to be a shootout. And I think that really, if you like entertaining football, even if you're not a big college football fan, that game has a chance to be really, really entertaining. I find it funny. It's hilarious to me. Both teams had quarterbacks listed as questionable for this week, with minor injury type stuff. And magically, I think it was Thursday, Pat Narduzzi says, guess what? Our guy can play. And then today I saw SMU, hey, guess what? Our guy's cleared. It's a miracle. If you like entertaining football, it should be a lot of fun. I still think that the line is two. It's two. I think 7.5 is, I don't know, maybe I'm seeing it wrong. 7.5, I think Pitt will cover that easy, to be honest. I just do. But as I said yesterday, I think one of the biggest things about that game is it's important to note if the Steelers, if Pitt loses that game tomorrow to SMU, I think they've got a real problem trying to get to the playoff or even to the ACC championship game. And there are some people that say, well, if you go 10-2, 11-1, it's a great season, especially because nobody was really thinking you were going to do anything. I get all that, but that changes as the season goes on. Now expectations should be high. They could win the ACC. Why not? Who in the ACC is all that great? Clemson, I think, is probably good and probably better than maybe they looked on opening day when they got killed by Georgia. I don't think they're unbeatable like they were when they had Trevor Lawrence or when they had Deshaun Watson, of all people. I don't think they're in that category. They're beatable. I mean, SMU will find out tomorrow. Miami, to me, is the worst undefeated team maybe in the history of college football. They should have lost like 3 games by now. Sooner or later, they're going to get picked off. But let's say they don't. You mean to tell me you don't think Pitt could beat them? To me, start dreaming big if you're a Pitt fan. Start dreaming big because I think Pitt has a chance, and especially if they win tomorrow. I think they have a chance to get to the playoff. I think they have a chance to win the ACC. I think all that stuff is out there for them. If they lose tomorrow, probably not. Probably we're talking about, well, at least they can go to a really nice bowl game, which that would be fine. But listen, I think you start to look at it and say, boy, they have a shot to do some really good things. Penn State, listen, James Franklin, the one thing about James Franklin that's very, very similar, that's very, very simple, is that James Franklin is really good at winning games he's supposed to win. You look at the last 5 or 6 years, they've been 10, 11 wins, haven't they, for the most part? They've been 10, 11 wins. They rarely, ever, ever lose to any of the teams they're not supposed to lose to. The problem he's had is winning these kind of games. So to me, you're making $10 million a year. You want to be considered this elite coach. You want to be, considered an elite program. It's simple to me. Go win this game tomorrow. Go beat Ohio State. A very beatable Ohio State. Ohio State team that I don't think is all that good. Go beat them. And then basically you're staring at, okay, we're going to the rest of their schedule, they're going to win. They go into the Big Ten championship game, probably against Oregon. Go beat Oregon. I think, regardless, the difference between Penn State and Pitt Penn State could lose tomorrow, win the rest of their games, they're probably still going to get to the playoffs. I don't think Pitt with one loss, if they're not in the ACC championship game, just because of the difference between the ACC and the Big Ten. So there's that. That's tomorrow. If you've got two huge games tomorrow in town. Of course, I'm not in town, but among the teams that we follow around here. Monday, like I said, we'll probably do something from Archies, and then we will watch Monday Night Football. So if you want to do that and join us for that, that would be a lot of fun. The other thing that's happening Monday night, college basketball begins, believe it or not. And here's all I'm going to say about this before we sign off. Keep your fingers crossed, but if you're a college basketball fan, this year there might be some really compelling college basketball played in this town, which we haven't said in a long, long time. But I think Pitt is going to be pretty good. I think Duquesne's going to be pretty good. And I think Robert Morris has gone out, used their NIL money smart. I think they've got a chance to be pretty good too. So we'll talk a lot more about college basketball down the road, but that starts on Monday night. So we got, Pitt-SMU tomorrow. We got Penn State against Ohio State tomorrow. And then Monday night we've got college basketball beginning. And then we've got the trade deadline for the NFL. So Monday we've got a lot to talk about. And like I said, we're going to do it probably down at Archies. And so if you you're out and about and you want to come join us and you want to join in, and be there live, and then, stick around and watch some of the NFL, the Monday Night Football game, well, we'll be doing that, and I'll be doing. Until then, enjoy your weekend. We will talk to you again on Monday.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.
Afternoon, Judge. Leslie, you're going to have to excuse me. I just need a moment of your time. Just a minute. So, what is it? It's the matter of the search warrant.